Welcome back to another episode of the Hardcore Casual with your boy, Bass the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, and any and all in between. I appreciate all the views, appreciate all the comments. Apologies, I was supposed to drop content. I was going to do Tuesday because I didn't have a breakdown show to do, but something else came up, so I chilled out. I was supposed to do it yesterday, but when I tell you there was a level of tiredness that took over me that I've not experienced in a long time. Like, I was awake, but I was dead to the world. I just couldn't do anything. So yeah, apologies for that, but we're here later than usual. Stayed at work a little late, doing a little bit of a tidying up, so to speak. But yeah, we're here now. There's a couple pretty big stories I want to talk about. Might be a bit controversial, but that being said, we got to do what we got to do. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I guess the first thing, a real quick one. Shakur Stevenson looks like he's going to be taking on Edwin De Los Santos, as I had predicted the other day. I think De Los Santos is 14-1 at the moment, and you got Shakur Stevenson, who I believe is 20-0. So that's going to be for the vacant WBC. Frank Martin came out apparently and said something along the lines of he didn't duck anything, but he wanted, or his team said he wants 50-50. Now, when he fought Michelle Rivera, I think Michelle Rivera got 200,000 for that fight, and I think Frank Martin got about 75,000. And then I think when he fought Hertunian, that fight he may have got about 150k, maybe 200,000 for that. So realistically, if they're telling you you're gonna make $1 million for this, and your highest paycheck prior to that was potentially 150, we're talking about nearly 7 times your highest purse there at that point. So yeah, it's doesn't really look good. There's a theory going around that with Ryan Garcia potentially coming out in December time to fight Pedro Campa, then maybe Frank Martin trying to be out in November as well is a bit too tight on the schedule, especially when you got Errol Spence likely to be facing Terence Crawford in November, and Anthony Joshua also supposedly getting out at the end of December as well. So that's a theory, but I don't subscribe to it. It still sounds like a duck to me overall. But yeah, Edwin De Los Santos and Shakur Stevenson, that should be a good one for that vacant title. I know Santos really believes that he can do a job on Shakur Stevenson. He's spoke his name for a little while now. It's time to put up a sharp, so it'll be interesting. Let's see what happens. So there's a lot of talk going on at the minute regarding the Anthony Joshua Deontay Wilder fight supposedly not happening next in Saudi. I know this was a sort of last week or the end of last week, the start of this week kind of talk, but I haven't said anything about it. Now, ultimately, here's how I kind of see it. I want to see Joshua versus Wilder the same as anyone else. There's a lot of noise, a lot of narrative that's kind of been built up around that fight for years, and I kind of want the narrative to stop. So I would like that fight to come around so that the final conclusion, we shall say, gets had, and you can kind of put the rest to bed just with regards to who's ducking who offered who what money, who doesn't want to acquiesce to the other side. Now, I want to see it as much as anyone else. The problem being, if the fight doesn't take place in Saudi Arabia, it's going to be very hard to make that fight. And I'll give you the reasons why in a moment, but the fact that it's going to be hard to make that fight, I don't have an issue with Anthony Joshua fighting someone else again in December. Ultimately, he's been very active recently, a lot more active than he has been for the last 5 and a bit years, up to 6 years almost. And it's good to sort of just have him back in the regular flow, especially if he's probably gonna, you know, retire by the end of 2024. So get the activity in now. A lot of people said that they felt he still needed that activity after Robert Helenius fight, so can't really begrudge him that. But you know, the fact that he's out there and he's being busy, no one can accuse him of holding up the heavyweight division, right? There's no belts. He's not stopping any mandatory challengers from having their title shots or any voluntary challengers. He's not sitting on a mandatory position, refusing to fight anyone until he gets the shot. He's just doing his own thing at this point in time. No problem there. Same thing with Deontay Wilder. He hasn't come out. He hasn't fought anyone as of late since or was it October, November last year. He hasn't been active in that sense, but again, he's not holding up any situation, although maybe you could blame him and Andy Ruiz for Tyson Fury facing Derek Chisora and then subsequently Francis Ngannou, because they didn't get their shot on, which meant no mandatory, which meant he was, you know, allowed by the organizations to then be able to hold up and not defend the belt against a ranked contender. But that's a whole nother story. But either way, he's not necessarily holding up the division in that sense either, is Deontay Wilder. Now, the reason that fight becomes very difficult if it doesn't happen in Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi or, you know, Qatar or somewhere like that, purely because if you're not negotiating with each person individually and they know what they're getting, they know the numbers, then it goes down to a pot situation again, and then it goes down to A side and B side. Now, unfortunately, Anthony Joshua will always be the A side to Deontay Wilder. It's simple economics, it's simple, you know, it's facts and stats. You look at the money he generates every time he fights, even recently, compared to the money that you know, Deontay's generated. The pay-per-view numbers of their last pay-per-view each guy done, and you know, even historically going back to just, you know, money earned here and there. So Deontay Wilder's not gonna like that. So you can't even then say, okay, well, 60-40, 65-35, like 70-30, like they're gonna demand 50-50, just like they did 5 years ago when Deontay didn't have a huge profile and didn't have, you know, big money made, you know, per fight. You know, when his highest paid day was like, what was it, 2.5 mil against Luis Ortiz, you know, and was being offered 5 times that and was refusing. Like, no, I want 50-50, I want a share of the revenue, I want a share of the pay-per-view, like, you know, it's undisputed, blah blah blah. So that's going to be a problem. You're going to get the egos clashing, rightly or wrongly. And to be fair, Anthony Joshua, even though he's still a clear A side over Deontay Wilder, he's not as massive as he used to be, and maybe he has a value of himself now that's overinflated. We don't know what Deontay Wilder's network situation is like at the moment. He may be a free agent, he may still be with Showtime and PBC, but Anthony Joshua is stuck like glue to the zone. He owns stakes in the zone. He has a lifetime partnership deal with Matchroom, so he can't fight anywhere other than that. So if Deontay Wilder and that team don't want to acquiesce to those demands, then you've got further issues. So for it not to take place in Saudi is just going to cause a whole heap of drama. Hence why I'm not really bothered with both guys going off and having their own thing now and then trying to figure it out later. Now, that being said, I do have a theory on what may look to take place, but I'm not going to drop it here. I'm going to save that for another video. Probably will drop that video tomorrow, or I will drop that video on Saturday, and I will give you my rationale as to what I think is happening and how I think that fight takes place moving forward. But yeah, just in terms of the dynamics of that one, I understand it's not necessarily what people want to hear. You know, people, it should just be able to be made, but I know egos on both sides will prevent that one from happening in the near future. So it looks like that's getting moved to maybe March or April time. But yeah, I'll tell you about what my thoughts are on that moving forward a little bit later on. Okay, last but not least, Conor Benn. So, as a lot of people have come out with recently, so apparently when he was cleared to box by the the National Anti-Doping Panel, what was that, the NADP or something like that, UCAD, I think it was the BBBOC that wanted to appeal it. Apparently the appeal has been stalled or has been postponed. I'm not sure what's going on with that. And I said from the start, I wanted to kind of hear the facts, or understand kind of what's going on from this whole situation before I give my take on whether I think Conor is guilty or whether I think he's innocent. Now, the one thing I will say is the way that he has gone out into the public and the way he's quote unquote protested his innocence and almost screamed from the rooftops and didn't want to let it go, and was on every single platform he could get on, proclaiming that this is wrong, I'll prove my innocence and you guys are all going to eat your words. It made me think to myself, right, this guy must really believe he's innocent, whether he is or isn't. Like, he truly believes he's done nothing wrong. Well, I saw something yesterday, right? He did an interview with Seconds Out with Danny Flexon. So I'm gonna be real with you guys. After listening to that interview, I think he's guilty. Now, I don't know if I can necessarily say I think it's guilty in terms of he willingly and knowingly was going to ingest performance enhancing supplements and whatnot. But he said some things in that interview which did not sit right with me whatsoever. All right. The first one that I remember, he basically said that along this journey, some people are no longer with me. Now, yeah, sometimes you clear the field and you get rid of people, but the context in which he said it made it sound like there was people that didn't have his back, didn't do certain things they were supposed to do, or maybe done things they weren't supposed to do. Okay, so you say, all right, cool. Then he says that, he'll be at 154 for his next fight, because he could potentially be going to 160. But to make it down to 147 next, there won't be a problem. Like, he's got the right science people behind him to do that easily. Okay, so performance enhancing science, that's something that they claim, but all right, maybe, you don't know. Then he said something along the lines, and I'll put the interview in the description box so you guys can read it yourself. You can kind of disseminate it yourself as well and tell me if I'm reading way too much into it. But then he also said, okay, if knowingly juicing and whatnot, lifetime bans, 4-year bans, of course. But if people can prove their innocence, then they shouldn't. You need to be able to explain that. Or if they haven't got the money, something like clomiphene, I'd like to help them with the way they test for clomiphene, because for someone who maybe doesn't have the resources that I have, and then they get banned. But imagine, like, okay, if you eat a banana and you're just eating a banana, and maybe, and there's something in the banana, well, how can that be strict liability? And as soon as he said that to me, that tells me that, forget this whole whether his body stores and breaks down clomiphene and other sort of substances different to other people, but that tells me that he ate something, or he took a supplement that he was given, and within that supplement was obviously either clomiphene or something else that wasn't supposed to be there, potentially, and both him and his team didn't necessarily do the due diligence on it. So while I can't just out and out say that, yeah, I think he was taking, you know, the oral clomiphene, you know, the pills you can take in the pill form to ingest into your body, it tells me that he knows that he took something that either wasn't fully vetted or that was given to him that he thought was correct, and then it turned out not to be, and as a result certain people have had to leave the team because they didn't do their due diligence, he didn't do his, and there's other stuff at play. Now, like I said, I could be totally wrong, he could still be innocent, but after listening to that interview, and I like, if you had, like I said, listen to it and put your comments, but I'm sorry, listening to that entire thing, it tells me that you're guilty of this situation. Whether you knowingly, like I said, whether you knowingly ingested like on a malicious thing, like I'm gonna strip this weight, I'm gonna blah blah blah. I don't necessarily think it's that, but I think you know that you messed up. I think he knows, and the way this whole interview came about, and obviously he's not always the most articulate, he just sort of comes out and says things, and sometimes a little bit like his dad used to come out and just say certain things, and then you think to yourself, oh, maybe that weren't the right way to drop it. But if you listen to the interview, it sounds mad, in my personal opinion. So yeah, right now my opinion is that I think he did it. I've only just held that opinion. I always kind of thought before, boy, I hope this guy's innocent, but I think that there's guilt here. Like I said, I'm not gonna go 100% and say it's 100% guilty, but I think there's guilt, and yeah, even if he is clear to box and everything, it's not looking great, in my personal opinion. But that being said, he's been out of the ring for coming up to 18 months now. I suppose he's going to get in the ring next week for you know, maybe an 8-rounder or 10-rounder with somebody in Orlando. And I mean, really, if you look at it in that sense, he served 18 months. UCAD might want 2 years or 4, but I don't really think that's going to happen. I mean, he was given a clearance of sorts by the WBC's Clean Boxing Program initiative, which is where the first failed test came from, and then the UCAD test, which wasn't even a UCAD test, which he passed. He's gone through that thing with the NADP, and they've lifted his suspension. So look, he served 18 months. If maybe you got to do another 6-month backdated ban to the UK to say that, okay, well, you can fight somewhere else, but you can't fight in the UK again until April 2024 or something, maybe that might have to be just what they accept. You know, do 1 or 2 fights abroad and then come back. But yeah, my opinion on it now is that I think he's guilty. That interview gave me guilty vibes the whole way through, and like I said, I'm gonna need you guys to to watch it and let me know if I'm just way off base here, but I'm not usually that far off. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it here. More videos, more content coming over the weekend. Basis picks will be out either first thing in the morning or at lunchtime tomorrow, so look out for that. There's a lot going on this weekend. There's quite a lot of fights, no big ones, but there's a lot of fights going on, so that might be an extended episode. That being said, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave those comments. I need to hear what you guys have got to say. But it's the Hardcore Casual out.